Discharge and burning metal filled the air as Sergeant Brian Carter picked his way through the wreckage of what had once been the forward command post of the 23rd Earth Combat Division. His combat boots crunched over shattered shell casings and the twisted remains of fallen mechs, the sound echoing through the eerie silence that followed the cataclysmic battle. Smoke coiled upward in sluggish spirals, staining the already bruised sky of Varela 9, a planet once rich with promise, but now reduced to ash and ruin. The sun burned low through the haze, painting the wasteland in a colorless twilight that made even living things appear dead. Brian adjusted the strap of his Mark 7 plasma rifle, its power cell humming faintly, a comforting sound amid the desolation. His HUD flickered with static, the enemy's last EMP wave having fried most of their communications. For the first time in years, he felt truly alone. The Drade swarm had hit them hard, harder than any simulation or report had ever prepared them for. A wall of chittering metal and flesh, unrelenting, intelligent, merciless. Now, as far as his sensors could tell, he was the only survivor of the 23rd. The silence pressed down on him, heavy as the dust that coated his armor. A silence broken only by the distant groan of collapsing steel and the faint hiss of cooling plasma. He should have moved on. Protocol dictated he make for the extraction point. But something in the wreckage ahead caught his eye, a flicker of movement, a glint of light too deliberate to be chance. His augmented muscles tensed as he dropped into a crouch, rifle raised, scanning through the drifting haze. Then he saw her. At first he thought she was another corpse, one of the countless casualties littering the battlefield. But as he drew closer, the truth struck him. A woman, not human, her body half buried beneath slabs of shattered alloy. Silver hair spread around her like liquid metal, skin the pale lavender gray of Lyrian physiology, faintly luminescent beneath the grime and blood. The once pristine armor that clung to her elegant form was split and scorched, its embedded energy conduits flickering weakly. She was beautiful, even in ruin, and unmistakably alien. "Son of a—" Brian muttered under his breath, lowering his weapon slightly. A Lyrian warrior, one of their allies. The ornate patterns of her armor marked her as high rank, possibly nobility. Her eyes fluttered open, the irises the color of storm clouds caught in lightning. "Don't move," Brian said instinctively, though he could tell she couldn't. Her breathing was shallow, her voice faint when she spoke. "I am Kira Banis, 3rd Lyrian Strike Force. I can't feel my legs." The translator in his helmet caught up half a second later, repeating her words in perfect English. His medical scanner confirmed what he already suspected. Her spine was damaged, beyond what battlefield medkits could handle. She should have been dead hours ago. "You shouldn't be alive," he said quietly. "So I've been told," she murmured, her voice soft but edged with dry humor. For a moment he almost smiled. Then the scanner pinged. Movement. Multiple contacts approaching from the north. Drade. He cursed, glancing at the blinking red blips on his display. Logic screamed for him to leave her, to find cover or flee while he still could. A paralyzed ally was dead weight, a liability in hostile territory. But when his gaze fell on her again, blood glistening like molten silver beneath alien skin, those storm-gray eyes watching him without fear, something in him hardened. "Just leave me," she said, reading his hesitation. "Your chances are better alone." He knelt beside her, already shifting the debris with augmented strength. "Yeah, that's not happening." She blinked, surprised. "You would defy protocol for me?" "Protocol can kiss my ass," he grunted, wedging his shoulder under a metal beam. "I didn't crawl out of hell just to leave someone behind." When the last piece came free, she gasped, her body shuddering with pain. He caught her before she hit the ground, her weight light but her presence immense. "This might hurt," he warned. "I've had worse," she whispered, managing a faint smile. "Then hold on." Brian hoisted her carefully into his arms, his servos whining softly under the strain. The world around them rumbled. The Drade were closing in. Above the rising smoke, the shattered husk of the command tower glowed like a dying ember. He glanced down at her, this proud, broken alien whose kind had once sworn never to bond with humans. "Guess it's just you and me now, sweetheart," he muttered, starting toward the shattered horizon. And somewhere in the cold light of the dying day, amid fire and ruin, a bond was forged, not by politics or orders, but by something far older, far stronger, something that neither human nor Lyrian command could ever have predicted. The wind howled through the skeletal remains of the outpost as Brian Carter trudged onward. Kira Banis cradled against his chest, her faint breath brushing the base of his neck through his armor's cracked seals. The battlefield stretched endlessly in every direction, a graveyard of machines and dreams, where the twisted carcasses of fallen mechs jutted from the ground like the bones of extinct gods. The air shimmered with heat from still-burning wrecks, and the stench of ionized blood clung to every breath. The Drade attack had turned this world into a tomb, and somewhere out there, the survivors of the swarm still prowled, hungry for the scent of life. His suit's environmental sensors pulsed faintly, the HUD glitching from the EMP waves. Each step sent sparks of pain through his augmented legs, but he ignored it, focusing instead on the steady rhythm of the woman in his arms. Her armor, though battle-scarred and fractured, was unlike anything human engineers had produced, woven with living circuitry that pulsed faintly, as if struggling to repair her on its own. He could feel the residual warmth radiating from her body, and something deeper, an almost imperceptible hum that resonated through his chest. "You're going to tear something," she murmured weakly, eyes half-lidded but aware. "You weigh less than my gear," he replied, breath steady but strained. "And besides, talking helps me forget how quiet it is." She gave a faint, humorless chuckle that turned into a cough, glowing blood staining the edge of her lip. "Humans fill silence with noise. Lyrians listen to it. Silence tells us who still breathes." "Well," he said, scanning the horizon, "right now silence is telling me we're both screwed." He ducked behind a fallen mech, lowering her gently beside him. The mech's once shining hull was riddled with dried plasma scars, its pilot long gone. The faint hum of power still emanated from its core, and Brian used his wrist interface to siphon what little charge remained to boost his suit's failing systems. "You're not like the others," Kira observed, her gaze unfocused but sharp in tone. "Your kind usually follow rules, orders." Brian smirked without humor. "Yeah, well, orders didn't survive the blast. Guess that makes me freelance now." He tore a strip of synthetic fiber from his undersuit and began binding the exposed section of her abdomen, where glowing blue blood leaked sluggishly. The material sizzled faintly as it touched her skin. She winced but didn't flinch. "You risk death for a stranger," she said softly. "You're not a stranger anymore." His tone was matter-of-fact, but his eyes betrayed something deeper. A flicker of defiance mixed with reluctant admiration. "And besides," he added, "you Lyrians saved plenty of humans when the swarm hit Sol. Consider this a favor returned." Her lips curved into something that might have been a smile if not for the exhaustion in her eyes. "You speak as though debts must always be balanced. That's the Marine way. Then I owe you mine." He looked up from her bandages, meeting her gaze. There was nothing alien about the emotion he saw there. Pain, pride, gratitude, and something else he couldn't name. The moment stretched, interrupted only by the shrill tone of his motion tracker. "Contact, multiple." His visor displayed 3 red dots converging fast. "They hunt in packs," Kira said, voice low. "Triangular formations. The visible ones draw attention. The real killers flank." Brian grunted, sliding her carefully behind a slab of armor plating. "Guess it's a good thing I've got an expert on hand." He steadied his rifle, the plasma coil glowing faintly in the dusk. The Drade emerged moments later, sleek insectoid horrors with carapaces of obsidian metal and eyes that glowed a venomous green. They moved with eerie grace, part biological, part machine, their limbs whispering across the scorched ground. Brian exhaled slowly, toggling his rifle's targeting array. 3 up front, 2 on the sides. "Classic ambush," Kira murmured, her senses sharper than his scanners. "Aim for the junction between the neck and shoulder. That's where the neural core is exposed. Appreciate the tip." He squeezed the trigger, and the first Drade exploded in a burst of molten light. The second went down before it could react, its shriek echoing across the ruins. The flankers came fast, too fast, but Brian was already moving, guided by instinct and Kira's whispered directions. Plasma bolts carved through the air and shards of black chitin rained down around them. When the last creature fell, Brian stood still for a moment, chest heaving, scanning for movement. Nothing, only the faint crackle of burning circuits. He turned back to Kira, who was watching him with a mix of awe and amusement. "You fight well," she said. For someone without telepathy. Thanks. You give good directions for someone without legs. Her eyes flashed with wry humor. Careful, human. Among my people, that would be considered flirting. Good thing I'm not among your people, he shot back, helping her to sit upright. Her laughter, soft and melodic, cut through the heavy air like sunlight through smoke. For the first time since the battle began, Brian felt something other than exhaustion. A spark of life, fragile but real. As they prepared to move again, the sky above them rumbled with distant thunder, though no storm clouds moved. The war might have ended here, but something greater had begun, something neither of them yet understood. And as Brian lifted Kira once more, her head resting lightly against his shoulder, the broken world around them seemed to hold its breath, as though aware that its history had just changed forever. The night had fallen heavy and thick over Varela 9, smothering the battlefield in darkness pierced only by the flicker of distant fires and the phosphorescent glow of alien blood drying on shattered armor. Brian Carter moved through the ruins with careful precision, every step calculated, every sound magnified in the unnatural quiet that followed extinction. Kira Banis hung weightless in his arms, her breathing shallow but steady, her luminous eyes open and unflinching despite the pain that laced every breath. The horizon was a jagged silhouette of wrecked ships and burnt metal towers, and beyond that, the faint rhythmic pulse of something alive, a distress beacon, faint but persistent. Brian's HUD tracked it, 1 kilometer east, buried under debris. It was their only chance, but the signal's frequency was strange, unfamiliar even to his advanced systems. That's not human tech, he muttered under his breath. Kira stirred slightly, her voice a soft melody beneath the crackle of distant lightning. Lyrian frequency, she said. Low pulse, sacred code, a healing chamber. He frowned, adjusting her in his grip. A what now? An ancient biotechnological relic, she murmured. Our ancestors used it to restore warriors beyond saving. It does not merely heal the body, it rebinds the essence. But it requires a bond. Brian didn't understand all of it, but he understood enough. You're saying it needs another person? It requires unity, she said, her tone suddenly distant. A merging of life forces. One cannot emerge unchanged. Her eyes flickered, meeting his with something that looked almost like warning. Your people are not meant for it. Maybe not, Brian said quietly, scanning the terrain ahead. But neither are you meant to die here. The wind whipped around them, carrying with it the metallic scent of storm and death. His body ached, exhaustion gnawed at his focus, but something deeper drove him on, something primal and defiant. The beacon's pulse grew louder as they neared, until finally the jagged mouth of a downed transport loomed before them, its hull half buried in the ashen earth. The markings were unmistakably Lyrian, sleek, elegant designs marred by blast scoring. Inside, a faint azure light pulsed like a heartbeat. We made it, Brian said, stepping through the shattered doorway. The air inside was cool and thick with the scent of ozone. The light came from a crystalline pod standing at the center of the wreckage, still intact amid the destruction. It radiated a soft hum, its surface etched with living patterns that shifted like ripples in water. That's the chamber, Kira whispered, awe and fear mingling in her tone. It still lives. Brian lowered her gently to the ground. Her armor flared weakly in response to the pod's energy, as if recognizing it. All right, he said, scanning the controls. Tell me what to do. She caught his wrist, her grip surprisingly strong despite her frailty. You don't understand. The process will bond us, our minds, our DNA, everything. It is irreversible. He met her gaze, calm and unyielding. I didn't survive this long to let you die because of some alien rulebook. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, with a weary exhale that carried centuries of pride, she whispered, So be it. The pod responded to her words, its crystalline shell unfolding with a soft sigh, releasing tendrils of glowing mist. The chamber's interior pulsed with liquid light, swirling between shades of violet and silver. Brian helped her inside, her body trembling as the energy brushed against her wounds. She winced, clutching his arm. You must enter too, she said. It will not begin unless it feels balance. He hesitated, then climbed in beside her. The chamber closed around them, sealing out the world with a sound like thunder underwater. The light intensified, blinding, filling every crevice of their being. Brian felt his pulse sync with hers, His breath caught in his chest as warmth spread through his veins, liquid fire that burned but did not consume. His mind flooded with images not his own, alien stars, silver oceans, the rhythmic hum of Lyrian battle hymns. He saw through her eyes the rise of her people, their wars, their victories, their losses. She saw him too, his memories of Earth, of childhood storms and the smell of rain, of fallen comrades whose names still haunted his sleep. Their consciousnesses intertwined, thoughts blending until the boundary between them dissolved. Pain surged, then pleasure, then something beyond both, a sensation of being utterly seen, utterly known. "Brian!" Her voice echoed in his mind, filled with wonder and disbelief. "You opened yourself completely." "Couldn't ask you to do it alone," he whispered, though his mouth no longer moved. The light reached a crescendo, filling the chamber until even the concept of flesh became irrelevant. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the radiance receded. The pod opened with a hiss of cool air. Brian staggered out, gasping, his body trembling but alive. Kira followed, her movements slow but steady. Then she stood, her legs bearing her weight once more. She looked down at herself, hands trembling, eyes wide. "I can feel," she whispered, a tear of silver tracing her cheek. "My body, my strength," Brian smiled faintly, though his vision swam. "Told you I wasn't leaving you behind." She stepped closer, her hand rising to touch his face. Her skin was warmer now, almost human, her pulse mirroring his. "Something's changed," she said, her voice both awed and uncertain. "In me. In you." He nodded, the truth of it thrumming in his blood. "Yeah," he said softly, glancing at her with a half-smile that carried the weight of destiny. "Guess we're in this together now." And somewhere, deep within the wreckage, the chamber's faint hum shifted, no longer the sound of healing, but the whisper of something new being born. The dawn over Varela 9 broke like a wound, raw and red, spilling light across the shattered landscape of metal and bone. Smoke still curled lazily from the ruins of fallen mechs, their steel carcasses catching the sunrise like the remnants of dead gods. Brian Carter stood atop a mound of scorched earth, his armor cracked and scarred, his breath fogging the visor as the morning wind tore across the plains. Behind him, the downed Lyrian transport lay silent, its healing pod dark now, its purpose fulfilled. Kira Banis stood beside him, her silver hair whipping in the wind like molten threads, her lavender-gray skin catching the first rays of light with an almost ethereal glow. The damage that had once paralyzed her was gone. She moved with the grace of a predator reborn, but her eyes held something different now, something profoundly human. When she looked at Brian, it wasn't just gratitude or curiosity. It was recognition, the kind that went beyond words. "You've been watching me since dawn," she said softly, her voice carrying that musical Lyrian cadence that seemed to weave itself into the air. "Making sure I'm real?" Brian smirked, checking the power readout on his rifle. "Making sure you don't keel over. Would hate to carry you twice in one day." She smiled faintly, though there was something behind her amusement, something that shimmered between fear and fascination. "You feel it too," she murmured. "The connection." Brian hesitated, glancing down at his gloved hands. Since stepping out of the pod, everything had felt different. His senses sharper, his mind clearer. He could sense her emotions like faint echoes at the edge of his thoughts. A pulse of awareness that wasn't his own but didn't feel foreign either. "I feel something," he admitted. "Like you're in the back of my head. Not unpleasant, just strange." "It's the bond," she said. "Our essences merged inside the chamber. Your mind touched mine, and now our energies are one. You're hearing me even when I don't speak." She turned to him fully, her expression softening. "Among my people, such a bond is sacred, permanent." "Permanent," he repeated, the words sitting heavy between them. "You mean forever?" "Until the stars fade," she said simply. "It's not something we choose lightly. It's deeper than any oath, stronger than blood." Brian let out a low whistle. "Guess I should have read the fine print before hopping in that pod." Her laughter broke through the tension, light and genuine. "You regret it already, human?" "Not yet," he said, meeting her eyes. "Ask me again after we survive this." The bond between them pulsed faintly, a rhythm neither of them could ignore. Through it, Kira could feel his resolve like a steady drumbeat, stubborn, protective, fearless. And Brian, in turn, could sense the storm beneath her calm exterior. Centuries of discipline, pride, and the fragile threads of something she'd thought her kind incapable of. Hope. Movement caught his eye on the horizon. 3 Drade scouts, mechanical silhouettes glinting in the distance. "Incoming," he muttered, crouching behind a half-buried gunship wing. Kira's eyes narrowed, her posture instinctive, poised for battle. "They hunt survivors," she said. "They will not stop until this sector is cleansed." "Then we make it one hell of a fight," Brian said, setting his rifle's scope. Before he could fire, her voice brushed his thoughts, not spoken but felt. "Left flank, they're splitting formation. Wait for my mark." His finger froze on the trigger, his muscles obeying before his brain could react. When she gave the signal, just a flicker of intent across their bond, he fired. The plasma bolt pierced the nearest Drade at the joint between its neck and thorax. It collapsed in a shuddering heap, black fluid spraying across the dirt. Without needing to speak, they moved together, her instincts guiding his shots, his reflexes amplifying her strategy. When one of the Drade lunged from the side, Brian didn't even see it, but he felt her warning pulse through his mind and rolled just in time to blast it mid-air. The third tried to flee, wings unfolding in a burst of static, but Kira was already in motion. Her energy blade, one of the few weapons salvaged from her wrecked armor, sang to life, a crescent of violet light slicing the creature cleanly in two. When the silence returned, it wasn't empty. It thrummed with the echo of their unity. "That," Brian said, lowering his rifle, "wasn't just teamwork." Kira's chest rose and fell, her eyes bright with exhilaration. "No," she said softly. "That was symbiosis." For a long moment they stood in silence, their breathing sinking unconsciously. Then Brian turned to her, grinning despite the exhaustion. "Guess we make a good team, Princess." Her gaze lingered on him, the faintest smirk touching her lips. "Among the Lyrians, that would make you my battle consort." "Not sure what that means," he said, reloading his rifle. "But I'm guessing it involves a lot of danger and not enough sleep." "You learn quickly," she said, stepping closer. The distance between them felt charged, electric, not just attraction, but the gravity of something older than war or duty. She reached out, brushing her fingers against his arm. "Your people will not understand this bond, Brian, not the way ours do." "Then they'll just have to catch up," he replied. In the stillness, the bond pulsed again, a heartbeat shared between two species, two souls who had become one. Far away, thunder rolled across the scarred plains, and in that sound was a promise. Their fight wasn't over. But neither were they. As dawn bled into firelight, Brian and Kira stood side by side on the edge of the ruined world, soldiers no longer bound by orders or biology, but by something far stronger. Something that neither empire nor enemy, nor death itself could unmake. The air crackled with tension as dusk returned to Varela 9, turning the landscape into a blood-red wasteland of molten glass and shattered armor. Brian Carter crouched near the edge of an abandoned ridge, his visor flickering with faint traces of motion. The Drade swarm had withdrawn after their last skirmish, but he knew they were regrouping. They always did. He checked the rifle's readout, energy cells low. His armor's diagnostics glowed amber across the HUD, indicating fatigue in both power reserves and muscle servos. And yet he felt stronger than he ever had. The connection with Kira was evolving, deepening. She stood a few meters away, her silver hair gleaming faintly in the dying light, her movements unnervingly synchronized with his. Even when he didn't look, he could feel her presence, a steady hum at the edge of his consciousness. Her voice slipped into his mind without sound. "They're watching from the south." He didn't ask how she knew. He trusted it now, the bond that made them something more than human or Lyrian. He raised his weapon just as the first Drade scout crested the ridge. The creature's body split open with a screech as his plasma bolt tore through it. Two more followed, but Kira was already moving, her energy blades flashing to life, painting the air in arcs of violet light. Their movements were fluid, perfect, as though choreographed by some shared instinct. Together they fought like a single organism, her grace complementing his raw precision, each anticipating the other's moves. The battle ended almost before it began, the last of the Drade collapsing in a heap of chitin and molten steel. Brian turned to her, breathing hard, his heart pounding with the rhythm of theirs combined. "That's 3 ambushes in 2 hours, he muttered. "They're getting smarter." Or more desperate, Kira replied, her voice low but resolute. The swarm knows something has changed. They can sense it, what we've become. He frowned, wiping ash from his visor. And what exactly are we, Kira? She hesitated, then met his gaze. Bound, not just in spirit, but in essence. I can feel your heartbeat as though it were my own. Your pain, your focus. Her hand rose slightly, trembling. And more than that, something new stirs between us. Brian was about to ask what she meant when it hit him. An echo deep within the connection, faint but undeniable. A pulse that wasn't his or hers. It felt small, fragile, yet filled with light. Kira, he whispered. What is that? Her eyes widened, and for the first time since he'd met her, fear flickered there. Not of death, but of realization. The chamber, she breathed. It didn't just heal us. It fused our life forces completely. Brian, it created something. Something? He repeated, the word thick on his tongue. You mean, a child, she said, her voice breaking into a whisper carried on the wind. Our child. The world seemed to still around them. The wind faded, the fires dimmed, the silence stretching as if even the universe itself was listening. Brian's first instinct was disbelief, but the bond pulsed again, stronger this time, alive, as if the very air vibrated with it. He didn't need proof. He could feel it. A small, glowing spark of consciousness forming deep within Kira's essence, intertwined with both their energies. Holy, he started, then stopped, words failing him. Kira's hands trembled as she touched her abdomen, her armor shifting away in recognition of the life growing beneath. It shouldn't be possible, she whispered. Our species aren't compatible. Even the healers of my kind would call this divine anomaly. Brian tried to process the flood of emotion tearing through him. Shock, awe, protectiveness, and a strange, indescribable warmth that wasn't entirely his own. Through their bond, he could feel it radiating from her, too. Wonder, fear, love. So this thing, he said softly, this bond, it's not just between us anymore. No, she said, her voice trembling. It's 3 now, and the third already feels. Brian looked out toward the horizon, where lightning flashed over the plains. His instincts, the soldier's instinct, kicked in. Then we've got to get off this rock. Fast. Agreed, Kira said, composing herself, her voice regaining the sharp tone of command. The swarm will not stop until it destroys what it doesn't understand. And our child changes everything, Brian finished. His tactical display blinked, showing the faint outline of an Alliance bunker 3 kilometers northeast. We moved there. It's our best shot. He reached for her hand, hesitant, then firm. Can you walk? I can fight, she replied, her lips curving into a defiant smile. And now, I have something worth fighting for. As they made their way toward the bunker, the storm rolled closer, lightning flashing like veins of fire in the dark. Every few steps, Brian felt that strange new pulse between them, the echo of the life they had unknowingly created. And as the ground trembled beneath distant thunder, he understood the gravity of it. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was the beginning of a new species, a fusion of 2 worlds bound by blood, battle, and something even stronger. For the first time since the war began, Brian Carter didn't feel like a soldier marching toward another fight. He felt like a father walking into destiny. The storm over Varelanon broke like the heavens themselves were at war. Lightning ripped across the shattered horizon, illuminating the ruins in bursts of blinding white. The wind howled through twisted steel, carrying the faint metallic scent of blood and ozone. Sergeant Brian Carter ran through the chaos, his armor sparking, Kira Banis at his side, alive, fierce, and radiant with purpose. Their bond pulsed like a second heartbeat between them, alive and growing stronger. And beneath it, something else, something smaller, purer, a third pulse, faint but undeniable. The child. Their child. They moved as one, flowing between cover and open fire as plasma bolts screamed through the night. The Drade had sensed it, the anomaly, the hybrid energy that now burned like a beacon through the wasteland. They're tracking the resonance, Kira said, her voice tight in his mind as she parried a blast with her energy blade. They can feel the child. Then we make them regret chasing us, Brian growled, switching his rifle to overcharge mode. The bunker loomed ahead, a scarred fortress buried in the ridge, a relic of old wars. Its gates hung half open, the defense turrets silent. "Looks empty," he muttered. "Or it's a trap," Kira countered, her eyes glowing brighter in the lightning's flash. Together they entered, the echo of their boots merging with the hum of ancient machinery. The air inside was thick with dust and the faint residue of burned ozone. The bunker's main control room flickered to life at their approach, recognizing both their signatures, the human military code and the Lyrian psionic frequency merging as one. It was as if the structure itself was awakening to their presence. "Systems are half dead," Brian muttered, tapping his HUD. "Power cells are shot. We'll have to reboot everything manually." "No," Kira said, placing a hand on the central console. "Not manually." The moment her skin touched the surface, the room came alive. Consoles flared to life, lights humming across the walls. The energy wasn't mechanical. It was organic, flowing in pulses that matched her heartbeat, their heartbeat. Brian watched as her body trembled, eyes closing. Through the bond, he felt it. The surge of life and light, not just from her, but from within her. Their unborn child was reaching out, connecting, learning. "It's interfacing," Brian said in awe. "The baby, our baby, is controlling the system. It understands both technologies," Kira said, her voice trembling with awe. "Human logic and Lyrian harmony. It's merging them," alarms suddenly wailed. Red lights bathed the chamber as sensors lit up with signatures. Hundreds of Drade closing in fast. "They've found us," Brian hissed, readying his weapon. "Then we show them what unity can do," Kira replied, her voice hardening into command. The bunker's walls shook under the first impact. The child's presence surged through the bond like wildfire. Power rippled outward as dormant defenses came online, not with human targeting algorithms nor Lyrian energy patterns, but something entirely new. The turrets rotated smoothly, firing plasma bolts that curved and adapted in real time, anticipating enemy movement. Drade mechs exploded mid-leap, their energy fields collapsing as the hybrid systems turned their own frequencies against them. Brian and Kira joined the fight, their movements perfectly synchronized, a seamless fusion of flesh, instinct, and shared thought. He fired where she looked, she struck where he moved. Every enemy that fell was a testament to their connection, a living weapon born not from war, but from love, will, and impossible evolution. But then, amidst the chaos, the child's consciousness flared brighter. Brian felt it, fear, confusion, instinct. The bond nearly overwhelmed him as images flashed through his mind. The stars, the Drade, the future. "It's too much," he shouted, holding his head. "It's trying to protect us, everywhere at once." Kira knelt beside him, her hand on his chest. "Then we must guide it," she whispered, voice trembling with both strength and tenderness. "It's not just ours, Brian, it's theirs. The next step for both our species." The walls shook violently as another explosion ripped through the bunker. The Drade were breaking through, but even they began to falter. The child's energy extended beyond the structure now, a radiant field connecting everything, machines, weapons, life. Through their shared vision, Brian saw the impossible. Drade soldiers hesitating mid-charge, their mechanical minds touched by the same psychic resonance that bound him and Kira. The swarm was feeling something it never had before: connection, understanding. The battle turned to silence. The surviving Drade fell still, their green optics dimming one by one. Kira collapsed to her knees, clutching her abdomen, her expression caught between pain and wonder. "It's communicating," she breathed. "Our child is showing them what we are, what they could be." Outside, lightning flashed, but it no longer sounded like war. The storm had shifted. The Drade began to withdraw, their formations breaking apart, dispersing into the horizon without another strike. The war, for now, was over. Brian sank beside her, catching his breath as the light in the bunker softened. "We did it," he said, disbelief lacing his voice. "No," Kira whispered, her gaze distant, as if seeing beyond the here and now. "They did it." She placed his hand over her heart, and through their bond, he felt it. A third heartbeat, stronger now, pulsing with light. The child's presence filled both of them, warm and infinite. Brian felt tears sting his eyes, something he hadn't felt since before the war. "What happens now?" he asked. Kira smiled faintly, her fingers tracing his jaw. "Now we stop surviving," she said. "We begin." The wind outside carried the first drops of rain over the scorched plains, a rain that shimmered faintly with light as it touched the ground, seeding something new in the soil. As they sat there in the quiet hum of the hybrid bunker, the echoes of war fading into memory, Brian Carter realized that he and Kira Banis had done more than survive. They had redefined life itself. Somewhere far beyond Varela 9, deep in the stars, a pulse spread. Human and Lyrian DNA rewriting itself across networks, ecosystems, and systems linked by the battle. The universe had taken notice. The age of separation was over. The age of unity had begun.